After brutal storms knocked out power, flattened entire neighborhoods, and destroyed cherished personal possessions, families in the Midwest are starting to rebuild their lives.
Thousands are homeless and at least 8 people have died. But as Charlene Israel reports, it could have been much worse.
The late-season outbreak of tornadoes and powerful storms stretched across 12 states. Now residents are picking through the remains of their homes.
Every minute I turn around, I'm crying. I don't know. I don't have a house.
This is the deadliest series of tornadoes Illinois has ever had in the month of November.
Illinois was the hardest hit, but officials there say things could have been much worse. Entire neighborhoods were flattened, but the death toll remains low. Television and radio warnings combined with text message alerts and storm sirens alerted many people to the storms ahead of time. But residents of some of the hardest hit areas say there was another factor that contributed to the relatively low death toll. Many families were at church. In Washington, Illinois, services were just getting started at Crossroads Methodist Church when the tornado warnings came over their cell phones by text.
We booked everybody into our shelters and kind of bunkered down. We had some ladies who were singing and we had some people praying. And at about, 11:15, heard a rumble and they say a freight train sound. And I heard that freight train sound and literally the tornado was 300 yards from the outside of our church and kind of just passed us by.
30 families from the church lost their homes, but so far no deaths or major injuries. Now the church is looking to rebuild its community by providing temporary shelter and stocking up on bottled water, canned foods, and other staples to give away to those in need.
We're from here, we're in the middle of it. I mean, we're gonna stick it out. We'll rebuild, we'll care, we'll love. If maybe they never stepped in the store, but to get a meal, at least they know that we believe in God who cares and loves for anybody.
CBN's Operation Blessing has an advanced team on the ground in Washington, Illinois, assessing needs and making plans to help the devastated community.
Operation Blessing is going to be networking with these pastors and church leaders as well as local emergency management to see how we can provide the churches with cash grants and cleanup supplies and work with the local emergency management to see what we can do to help with volunteer coordination if that's needed.
Charlene Israel, CBN News.
Our prayers go out. Operation Blessing will be there doing what it can, but oh, what a tragedy. Shifting gears a little bit, you know what the oldest book in print in America is?
I have no idea.
I know because somebody sent me a catalog. They were selling it. And if they think I can buy it, they're crazy. But in any event.
It must be very expensive.
Well, this is a copy of the Bay Psalm book from the early days of our nation. The oldest printed book.
In America?
In America. And here's some of the stuff that it looks like. And Sotheby's, he's got it now on sale. And if you want to get an old prayer book, here's a cover page for it. Can you get a close-up of that? That's what it looks like.
Beautiful.
What would you like to pay for that treasure to have in your home?
What would I like to pay, or what do I think it's worth?
Either one, darling.
Well, those would be two different things.
Well,
well, value, I can't imagine. I mean, it must be, I don't know.
Well, it's a book. It's a book with old text, old type.
Yeah, but is it a one of a kind?
Well, sure, it's one of the guys, the oldest. It's a Bay prayer psalm book, Bay psalm book from the Bay Colony.
Earliest printing, early founding of our nation.
That's
I don't know, $1 million maybe?
Would you believe 15 to 30 million?
Wow.
No.
And you're not buying. What's up with that?
Well, my wife wouldn't let me.
I spent the Christmas budget already.
I said, honey, this will look so nice in our library. Wouldn't you like to put it in your bookshelf along with all that other stuff? And
well, it's quite a...
I mean, I don't know where in the world you'd put it, but probably Yale or someplace would bid for it. But in any event, I just thought that's a little bit of Americana. But it's amazing, the Psalm book. You know, when they were printing in the early American, they wanted to sing the Psalms. They wanted to read the Bible. And that was the foundation, the first printed book in America.
That's great.
Interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very.
Well, the American people are rendering their verdict on our president and his special health care law. And the verdict doesn't look good. John Jessup has that story from Washington. Here's John.
Pat, the bungled rollout of Obamacare and broken promises about people being able to keep their insurance are taking a heavy toll on the president's approval ratings. A new ABC News Washington Post poll puts the president's approval rating at just 42%. 55% disapprove, a new record high for his presidency. 47% see him as honest and trustworthy. 56% disapprove of his handling of the Obamacare rollout. The poll also shows if the 2012 presidential election were held today, Mitt Romney would be leading with 49% to the president's 45%. The White House has set a November 30th deadline to fix the healthcare website, but Republicans say the damage is already done.
I'll tell you what I'm hearing from my constituents. They're writing me about cancellation notices of plans they wanted to keep, rising premiums.
Republicans are counting on next year's congressional elections turning into a referendum on the health care law. Pat, do you think there's anything the president can do to claw back his public approval?
The best thing would be to be honest and to cancel the whole mess and to say, look, we made a mistake, I apologize, and what I'm going to do is just cancel it all, send it back to Congress and see if they can't give the people what is needed and take away all these onerous provisions. If he did that, he'd be a hero, but he's not going to do it. He's going to fight for it. There's a story, you know, in Drudge. Drudge got all kind of news, but in any event, you get Drudge on your little, do you look at Drudge?
Not usually, to be honest.
I'm showing the depths of my intellectual poverty, but in any event, they had a quote from him. He was speaking to a group of the faithful. He said 100 million people have signed up.
What?
And people are saying, is he still smoking grass, or what is it that's going on? 100 million. And he's kind of like, is he dumb? Is he out of it? I mean, is that a slip? And are they trying to cover it up? I mean, you know, he's the president. He's not supposed to say things like that.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? But in any event, what could he do? What he could do is say, I made a terrible mistake, but they're not going to do that. And Nancy Pelosi says, we're going to cover it up. No, we're going to, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz says, we're going to run proudly on the health care law. Ooh, and the Republicans are just licking their lips with glee at what may be happening. John.
Pat, a new report says the White House was warned as far back as late March that the Obamacare website rollout was facing serious risks. The consulting firm of McKinsey & Company prepared a report that showed several of the potential problems for the website, along with Obamacare's call-in centers. The firm briefed top administration officials, including Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius. The House Energy and Commerce Committee released the McKinsey report. Republicans say it's evidence that despite White House assurances earlier this year that everything was going fine, they should have known Obamacare was facing serious problems. President Obama is trying to get key senators from both parties to back off on imposing new sanctions on Iran. The White House is trying to work out a deal with Iran on its nuclear program, but some senators want new sanctions because they believe it will help force Iran to slow down its nuclear activities. The House already overwhelmingly passed a bill for new sanctions, but the White House and State Department argue they're close to an agreement with Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calls it a bad deal. Pat?
There's a big article today that the Iranian gas company, Iran has, I think, 15% of all the gas reserves in the world. I mean, it's a huge moneymaker for them, and they're shipping gas to Turkey and all these other countries. Their company is so badly mismanaged, and these sanctions are starting to bite really hard, that this huge company is now in the process of declaring bankruptcy. That's the kind of thing that sanctions are supposed to do. They're biting hard, and if these sanctions can cripple the Iranian economy, then the Iranian government is going to be forced to say, we will give up our nuclear ambitions. But yesterday we did a story that the Saudis have said, we will allow the Israelis to refuel on our soil. Now, let me tell you, I was in a plane once upon a time coming from Africa. We had a flight plan across Saudi Arabia, and when we got near their shore, they said, you turn around, and if you try to come across, we will shoot you down. I mean, it's that kind of thing with Saudi Arabia. And now they said to the Israelis, you can bring your jet bombers down to our airspace, refuel, and go ahead to hit Iran.
There ought to be a message in that.
A big message. And as Netanyahu said, look, we live in this region. These people in Europe don't do it. This is our neighborhood. We understand the dangers. But to loosen sanctions now would be an act of folly. And you ask yourself, what is going on in Washington? Why don't they get it? John.
Pat, millions of Christians around the world are praying for the peace of Jerusalem, but there's also a prayer movement going on in the city itself. As Chris Mitchell shows us, Christians from India recently dedicated a prayer center in the heart of Jerusalem.
We dedicate the Israel Prayer Tower for the glory of God to touch the nations of the world and Israel.
Several years ago, Dr. Paul Dinakaran decided to establish the Israel Prayer Tower in Jerusalem.
My heart is overwhelmed with joy, and I say, thank you, Jesus. You love me for the word that you have given me for the nations of the world.
One of the main goals is specific prayer for the nations of the world.
To pray for the peoples, for them to receive the gospel, and the nations, for the people to receive solutions to the problems of humanity in each nation.
Some see this as a fulfillment of prophecy.
There's no other city on the planet that God commands to pray for its peace but Jerusalem. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, Psalm 122. And we're seeing that come to pass. Nations are coming up to Jerusalem as prophesied in Zechariah. And I believe that when God is about to do something big, He prepares a great army of intercessors to partner with Him to bring His purposes about. So that gives me a lot of excitement about what's happening. And as we see people from India, people from all over the world now coming up to pray.
This prayer center is one of several in the city. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
And Pat, given the issues facing Israel today, those prayers are needed now as ever before.
Well, Paul Dinakaran's father, DGS Dinakaran, is a dear, dear friend of mine, and Paul is too, and he's doing a splendid job, so we congratulate him on this. But he has a prayer center, I think, in Toronto and one in Dallas, Texas, and various other places where he wants people praying for the world.
Wonderful family.
Newly declassified documents show that the National Security Agency willfully defied court rules with its surveillance programs. According to court records, the NSA reported its own violations in 2009 and acknowledged it had collected material improperly. NSA leaders then promised they would take additional safety steps to prevent it from happening again. In one case, they blamed their mistakes on poor management and not bad faith. A federal judge has approved halal meals for Muslim inmates in Michigan. Under the settlement, Muslim prisoners will be guaranteed meals that meet strict Islamic standards. Halal meals are prepared under Islamic rules governing the slaughter of animals, and pork is prohibited. The judge also ordered the state to ensure that Muslim prisoners can celebrate important festivals and attend services that could conflict with work or education classes. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.